So last time we talked about the order of operations and how to use them to simplify something as crazy as that, right? To make something big into something small and simple. However, I intentionally left out some properties of numbers that we tend to follow. There's three properties. The two here are fairly common sense. We have the associative property, which just means no matter how we organize something, we can essentially get the same answer. So remember with our order of operations, we do our parentheses first. So notice that our parentheses are around two different sets of numbers. So if we do that first, 5 plus 4 is 9, right? Add 1, that's 10 on this side, right? Whereas if we do it the other way around, we do this first, right? 4 plus 1, which is 5, plus 5 is still 10, right? So no matter which way we slice it, we still get 10. Likewise, the commutative property is very similar. It's basically if you flip something around, they end up working the same way. 5 plus 2, 7, is the same thing as 2 plus 5, 7. Pretty common sense, right? But there's a property I left out that we could have actually used to help us simplify this. This is called the distributive property. And what it is essentially multiplying things out. There's a way to write this to where it works a little bit easier. Now, we wouldn't use it for something like this, but let me kind of show you how it works. Last time when I broke down just this section, right, I did the parentheses first, which is why we do order of operations. We do 5 minus 4 is 1, and then we drop that 8 down. Then we say 8 times 1 is just 8, correct? That's one way of doing it. However, the distributive property lets us use a different method of doing it. How we do that? Well, instead of just doing the inside first, we can actually distribute the 8. Now, what does distributing mean? Well, the word distributing means like we're spreading things out, right? We're giving things to everyone. So we're going to give this 8 to the 5 and the 4. How do we give it? We multiply it. So 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 4 is 32. And then we do the subtracting. 40 minus 32, it's still 8. Notice how they're the same. That's what the distributive property is. Now, why would you use this over doing something like this? Well, sometimes you have something you actually can subtract. Sometimes you have letters, variables, which are just another word for letters, right? You have things that you actually can't subtract. So we're going to talk about that, how we can subtract things and how we can distribute things so we can make something look simpler, take something that's complex, right? But make it look 10 times simpler by using the distributive property. So we're going to do a couple things. Let's start off with a couple easy ones. We're only going to do a few, really. Let's start off with one like this. Let's do 4 times 2 plus 9x. Now, like I said before, why would you use the distributive property for this? You can say, I can just add 2 and 9x together. Well, you can't, because they're not similar terms. We'll get into what I mean by similar terms next time. But we can't combine 2 and 9x because they're two different things, right? So what do? We take care of this by distributing, which is what I talked about. And remember, distributing is just multiplying. So all we do is 4 times 2, and then 4 times 9x. Well, 4 times 2 is just 8. That's pretty simple. And then 4 times 9x. Ignore the x for a second. What's just 4 times 9? That's just 36. And since that has an x behind it, we slap an x behind it. That's how you do this. Now, if you have negatives, sometimes people have a little bit of trouble with negatives, and that's okay. Let's say you have something like this. And this is simplified as far down as it can go, okay? I forgot to say that. That's our kind of answer, really. So now let's do another one. Let's do one where we have negative 4 times negative 6p plus 7. Again, p is just a letter, a variable, right? It's just something to help us do some things later on. We'll deal with that as we see it. So again, what do? We distribute this negative 4. And people have trouble with negatives sometimes. But remember, when you're multiplying things out, let's just focus on the 4 and the 6. 4 times 6 is 24. We know that, right? But what do two negatives make when you multiply them together? They cancel out and give you a positive. So this is a positive 24p, right? Now, we're going to do negative 4 times positive 7. Well, 4 times 7 is 28. But because of that negative sign, it's a negative 28, okay? So this is as simple as it can get. Now, there's a way to go backwards, which we'll talk about later on. But that's as simple as it can get, okay? Now, what if you have things that are a little bit in weird order? Now, some people get weirded out when there's something in a slightly different order. So let me erase this real quick. I'm going to flip this around, okay? So I'm going to, instead of putting the number in the front, I'm going to put the number in the back, which makes people kind of scared, but it's okay. It works the exact same way. Let's say you have 8 plus 2x, and then times a 4. Now you may say, well, how do I distribute that? Well, there's two ways. You can actually either do your arrows like this. I'm going to do it kind of backwards. All right, I'm going to do it like this. So I do 4 times, doesn't matter which way you do it, I'm going to do it like this way. 4 times 8, that is 32. And then 4 times 2 is 8x. Don't forget your sign in between. Same way, it just looks a little backwards. Now, we're going to talk about an order to write these in at another point in time. Let me do some ones with some negatives that are backward just to really throw you for a loop, but I don't think I'm going to throw anybody for a loop. That's a -3, not a -3. See that time symbol? So I'm timesing whatever's in here by -3. Okay, let's do 7a minus 6. Again, don't get freaked out by the letters. We'll deal with that, right? So again, we do the same thing. We're going to distribute that -3 in. So let's do -3 times 7a. Well, 3 times 7 is 21 because that negative is a -21. And because that little a there, we're going to shove a little a right there. -3 times -6, two negatives make a positive 18. Simple as that. Just as simple as that. Hopefully that made some sense. If you need any help, let me know.